I'm not sure what the appropriate official protocol is, but if you make a public declaration that you're involved in maritime war games, and then a warship from another country comes up on you during this time frame, what is your expectation of what they're going to say or do to you? They're simulating a real time battle scenario. I don't know. This is where it would be helpful for me to actually be able to speak to somebody in person. Because let me tell you, if I declare that we're engaged in a maritime military exercise and you encroach upon it, I will shoot to kill you. You don't play games with that shit. There's a reason why you go through these kind of military procedures. You guys keep trying to say, well, it's a simulation. Well, it's a war game. Unfortunately, I did find that book in the library before it was conveniently disappeared, discussing a round of war games that occurred between the United States and members of the Middle East, specifically Iran. And this was at a time when there were no two ways of cutting it that Iran was already known to have nuclear warheads that were, if nothing else, capable of reaching Israel. There weren't any speculations or chastisements that they might be trying to develop a ballistic nuclear weapons program. It was understood and known. They didn't ex post facto try to erase the record to make it look like, well, they might be developing it, so we have to stop them. You didn't change the parameters around what actual prevention of armament was. Proliferation prevention is different before you let them acquire those kinds of weapons. And unfortunately, I know a little bit about the production of those kinds of weapons and what might motivate somebody to allow for that which they have identified as being the opposition to acquire them. Just so you know. So it is not a simulation, it is not a game, and it never has been. If there is a public declaration that there is a formal military exercise ongoing, and you think you're going to go up and say, what? You're going to whistle at her? You're going to catcall her? You're going to go try to give her a hug? I'm surprised you're not dead. Which brings up the presidential pension system, and my understanding that part of what was being hoped for was that Donald Trump would be dead by now. That there were at least two opportunities for financing his actual death. And the understanding was that the death of a head of state in office would allow for the kind of investment necessary to cap off, so to speak, the pension schematology. There had been senators, including high ranking senior senators. There had been congresspeople. There had been cabinet members that had some very significant and even fatal occurrence in connection with their receipt of benefits or accrual of benefits based on their time in office. And one of the things that we've been dealing with in the last decade or so is that in order to cap off the presidential pension scheme, we need the death of a head of state. I don't think Mohammed Morsi quite made the specific kind of investiture that we thought we needed, right? And what other heads of state have been exposed comparably? Was Donald Trump being diagnosed as having COVID 19 after, by the way, he got a COVID 19 test from China, enough to be able to meet the presidential obligation for the presidential pension system, which is necessarily an important part of securing and confirming the federal pension system and the other private pension schemes that are connected to circulation of benefits associated with the federal pension system? I don't think it was. And I think that that is actually very well known. Is somebody going to attempt to substitute an understanding that a family member could well have been the president but ended up dying before he made it into office as some sort of substitute leverage? Well, then you know what that tells me? You're going to need the death of a head of state on your watch in order to cover the difference, aren't you? Are you hoping to get one before you're sworn in Let me ask you, would it make a difference if there was a concession to accepting a new president while the other president stepped down and then that head of state died? Because that's exactly where I think this pension fraud is. I think that's the level it's at right now, as of today. I'm just letting you know. If you're going to play this game where you're going to loan me out because you think you're entitled to, as the 10% contribution to some sort of foreign assistance requirement, you'd be dead. You'd be dead, and your buddies behind you would be dead today. It wasn't a game. I already declared.